You're listening to the Wrigleyville Nation podcast. Season ticket holders and lifelong fans with neighborhood ties discuss Cubs news and neighborhood happenings. Here's your hosts, Jeremy and Pat.
Hello and welcome to the Wrigleyville Nation podcast. This is episode 310 of the podcast. My name is Jeremy Deemer and I'll be your host. I'm joined as always by my co-host. He's my cousin and he's high atop Wrigleyville tonight. How's it going, Pat?
Jeremy, it's not even completely dark outside and it's 8 o'clock at night. So that's a good sign for summer, right?
It is. Looking forward to summer-like weather. We have not had that here.
On the flip side, it's 35 degrees and raining. I forgot that part.
I'm hoping to get to the game on Friday afternoon this upcoming week here. So hoping for some nicer weather to come in as we turn the calendar to May. And we will recap the first month of the Cubs season. We will talk about the news, happenings, preview the upcoming week ahead, and to help us unpack all things Cubs, please welcome back to the show, longtime friend of the show. Haven't had him on in a while. Glad he's back to join us this time. You know him from his podcast, Beers and Beat Guys. Please welcome Tom Loxas back to the podcast. Tom, thanks for taking time out to talk Cubs with us tonight.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me on.
First of all, big fan of your podcast. Really like really like the guests. A lot of those guests you have on there are friends of our show as well. So definitely like to like what you're doing over there at the at your podcast.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad to be back. You know, I just I did the original version was pretty much like covering all Chicago sports, and then COVID hit and kind of just derailed that, obviously, with no sports. And then I decided last year to bring it back, but I just really wanted to do Cubs this time, and I really wasn't enjoying the Cubs last year, so I decided to wait till this year, and I'm really having fun with it. And like you said, we share a lot of the same great guests, and I'll be having you guys on mine soon.
Looking forward to it. Let's start with the week that was for your Chicago Cubs. Pat, you were the optimistic one last week. What was your prediction going into last week for the record of the Chicago Cubs?
So having correctly predicted the record every week this season, I went in this last week with the prediction the Cubs would finish 3-3 on the week. And it sort of seemed like I was going to be, especially after the Killian game, I'm like, well, looks like it's going to be 3-3. So right again. But apparently I was wrong. The Cubs managed not to go 3-3. They managed to go 2-4. I am still shaking my head at that.
Yeah, this is a tough week, Tom. Let's start.
I warned you about the Marlins, though, didn't I? I did warn you. I said that there's just something about that team and that place. Ugh.
Yeah, there are some positives to take out of the week. I think the first is Justin Steele. He had a good week. He was one of the victories against the Padres, but and also looks pretty good against the Marlins. You got to be happy when Justin Steele and his first month overall for the Cubs, Tom.
Yeah, that's my guy. That's he's one of the guys that I thought in the beginning of the season could kind of accelerate, their chance at winning again if he was going to continue to look like he was going to be a top of the rotation starter, a legit, front end starter, and everything he's doing, since the All-Star break last year has starting to convince me that's pretty much there. He's there. He's one of the best pitchers in the National League, if not baseball. So, everything he's doing is putting the Cubs in a good position, especially with him and Stromer at the top of the rotation. So, it was a really good start for him, too, because he didn't really have his best stuff and he had the battle. But that just shows you that that's part of, what an ace does. He battles when he doesn't have his best stuff. And I thought that was my biggest takeaway from his start.
Yeah, I agree 100%. In fact, I had the good fortune of being able to go to that game and start off the week with a win. But I'll tell you, when I sat down in the seats and I looked up at the right field, was it the Budweiser scoreboard, whatever it's called, and I looked at the lineup for the Padres, and it's Tatis and then Soto and Machado and Bogarts and Cronenworth. I was like, wow. Like, I know those guys are all on the team, but to see it like in a row like that and to know that, basically every other inning you would have those guys coming up, it just made, to me anyway, it made the start even more impressive because as Thompson, without his best stuff, he really battled, but he battled against some really good hitters. And, really, I mean, Soto, for example, was no match whatsoever for him. He just really handled him well, and I was impressed. Struck out Soto a couple times, Tatis a couple times. I mean, and then you watch that same Padres team this weekend, not against the Cubs, but against other teams, and those guys are all hitting like 2 home runs each. it's but against the Cubs, they're really handcuffed. So great job by Justin Steele, and he really has been. He and Stroh basically have been the backbone of that rotation now, and it shows in the Cubs' record. Frankly, I mean the ability to not have to go to your pen so early, and all the other sort of side benefits of having those guys pitching consistently well. So great start.
It's a great point you make, because when they do have to go to the bullpen, one, the bullpen is not that great, and two, it means David Ross is making decisions, and we've seen some questionable choices this week as well, especially when it comes to the handling of the bullpen. Tom, your thoughts on some of the bullpen decision making we saw this weekend, leaving some guys in a little longer than I was comfortable with. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I kind of like hedged my second guessing the other day with on Friday night with Stroman, because I just had a weird feeling about him going through the order of the third time. But I also understand, what you were saying too, is that the bullpen has been kind of leaky. So I felt like, all right, I got to cut him some slack here because he's got to try to get, some innings out of his top starters. But yeah, I kind of wasn't feeling really great about Stroman going out there again in the 7th inning. And, some of the moves, just overall, even that Ross has made with the bullpen has been puzzling. And even just the way he's deployed guys. Like, I think I had Matt Clapp on my last pod, and we were talking about how he's been using Keegan Thompson. And lately he's been using him even a little bit differently. But just to not use him in more of the high leverage situation so far this year was kind of weird for me. And I also feel the same way about Alzolay. I don't know how you guys feel, but I feel like he should be also getting some cracks at some high leverage situations, just because he's got the stuff at least to get some swing and miss. And I know, Fulmer looked at least decent in this last series because he was in some different situations. Maybe that let him relax a little bit. So that was a good sign. But yeah, Ross isn't the best, I don't think, at handling the bullpen or even some of the strategic moves. So hopefully he handles, the clubhouse really well and other aspects of managing, because yeah, some of his in-game management skills have been very, very scary.
And I would say, and I'm saying this in the light most charitable to David Ross, but yeah, he did take over a team this year, break camp with a team that didn't really have a closer. I think.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to the extent that Fulmer was going to be the closer, I think that was kind of a hope more than a strategy. And he's really been handcuffed by having. I mean, I'm an old school guy, but I guess really handcuffed by having only one left-handed pitcher, and only for like a week. Like Hughes, was on the deal to start the year, and then came in, and then went back on for the IL. And then with Killian's start, the 3-inning start, it doesn't leave you a lot of great options. And I know it's early in the year; they're trying to sort this stuff out, figure out who the closers are. We've talked, in the winter, we talked about maybe Alzolay being somebody who could pitch later in games. To Tom's
we definitely
point.
want to see it. We definitely want to give
at least try it out at this point, right? But it's a lot of times it doesn't seem like there are it's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. Like, it's kind of pick from a collection of guys, and they're trying to balance out the innings too, especially with the short start. And so it can get tricky. We've been fortunate there haven't been any prolonged extra inning games. These, was it last year, the year before, they had like 13 and 14 inning games, 17 inning game once early in the year. So we haven't had that to deal with. But, it's tough when you don't have set roles, I guess, for players, because then I think you're more subject to second guessing.
The Cubs go into Miami and proceed to lose 3 straight one-run games. Let's start with the and also the presentation of these games. I also want to get your thoughts on, as they were on every other platform that you can imagine.
I watched the game on Peacock this weekend. I didn't think I'd ever do that.
Yes, I subscribe to Peacock for all of the pro wrestling content on there, so I'm already a frequent subscriber for that. So the Peacock one was no problem. I was bothered by the uniform choices of the Miami Marlins for this series as well. I like the throwback Friday jersey, but I felt like the helmet was not the right color teal to match the jersey. It seemed like it was off. It's very bothersome, but and I think there's
Caleb Killian thought the same thing, Jeremy.
So that's what, yes,
by that.
That's what got him. Yep.
Reaching for anything for so let's start there with, we mentioned Caleb Killian a few times. How disappointing was it to see him still not ready? We saw him last year. He came up, he struggled. He went back to AAA, struggled, and we worried that he was just broken. And then he comes up, gets an opportunity here, and we hear from David Ross and the Cubs coaches to say that, he's not ready. How concerning is that for you, Tom, that Caleb Killian's still not ready at this point?
Yeah, I'd hate to say that. I don't want to bury the kid, because there still might be a chance that they can, still work with him, but it's not looking good, and he's going to get buried by some of these other options that they have, thankfully. They have Javier Assad, and they have, we'll see what happens when Kyle Hendricks comes back, but there's still some stuff to be worked out, and luckily they probably won't need him to make any more starts this year. Let's cross our fingers. But it kind of felt like a punt to me, to give him that start. And I know there might have been even some other, options that people were throwing around on Twitter that I wouldn't have minded. But the bottom line is that if they have eyes on him, they should have known that he wasn't ready. And if they did, and they're kind of, giving him that opportunity when they're in a, they're winning right now, or at least, they're looking good. So, losing these games in a game like that kind of hurts, especially, the way that the series ended up unfolding. I get it, throw him out there for a couple innings, and if he's garbage, and you got to go to the pen, and that's pretty much what happened. But yeah, just in retrospect, it just, after that series, it just hurts even a little bit more. It just felt like they kind of punted that game a little bit.
I still think back to, it was only 13 months ago, even 12 months ago, a year ago, when we'd be on this podcast talking about how excited we were about the combination of Brennan Davis and Caleb Killian coming up to save the Cubs, and the first wave from the farm system, and how it was going to help transform the team. And people were talking about Killian as a number 2 starter, maybe, if the worst, a 3 starter. And Brennan Davis is going to be the center fielder of the future, or at least the near future. And what a difference a year makes. Davis is struggling in Iowa after a lost season last year, and Killian, after mowing through the minors last year, came up and just lost it, and hasn't been the same since. It's disturbing, I think. It's frustrating because those would have been 2 nice pieces for the Cubs to add this year around, but I guess we'll have to wait for the next wave. I don't think we'll see Caleb Killian start a game before the trade deadline. But we'll see.
Yeah, hopefully the Cubs add more starting pitchers by guys getting healthy. And you mentioned, Tom, that Kyle Hendricks is coming off the injured list as he is pitching his second minor league rehab outing at AAA Iowa on May the 2nd, and he's coming back. So this is a good sign. This is good news. What are your expectations for Kyle Hendricks in this rotation? Is there any chance that he's he's the guy that kind of will round out this rotation?
Yeah, I mean, luckily my expectations aren't too high, but at the same time, I know that they've worked with him on, shortening his delivery, and it looked like he was kind of touching a higher velocity than he normally does in one of his rehab starts. Although he did get tagged pretty well in the last one, but who knows? Maybe they had him kind of focusing on one pitch more than the other, almost like a spring training start or something. Or he's just rounding back into shape, but. Yeah, I think at the very least, if he can be a guy that holds down, one of the back end spots, I just don't know what that means, though. As I'm saying, it's like, Drew Smiley's pitching a really nice game tonight, and Wisniewski, if anything, might be the guy that, if Hendricks looks good, they might have to push him out of the rotation because I can't see Kyle being in the bullpen, so maybe Wisniewski ends up getting more of a look as a piggyback kind of starter for now, or maybe they send him back down to Iowa and let him work on some of his, his kinks. But I still have a lot of hope for that kid. So yeah, it's going to be a very interesting thing to see. What do you guys think?
Do you guys remember that the Braves game last year? I think it was a Sunday night baseball game when Hendricks, might have been in May. Hendricks started and gave up like 6 home runs or something like that. The first couple innings. That's sort of what I dread. I don't want Hendricks to come back and then get shelled because I like him too much, and
right.
Because he's been such an integral part of the team, and I have such sort of positive thoughts about him. I don't want it to turn into an awkward situation where they have to cut him or something like that, or it just. I have trepidation over that. I mean, if he could be a serviceable fit starter, that'd be great. But especially if the Cubs are going to try to win right now, I don't know how much leash you can have. And it is the last year of his deal, so it's not as if you can really kind of run with him for a couple of months and hope he gets it back together. It could have done that last year when it didn't matter, or the year before. But this year, you need to win those games, and I just don't want to see an awkward situation where things end poorly. How's that for pessimism?
No, it's a concern. It's we haven't seen good Kyle Hendricks in quite a while, so hopefully we don't have the situation you described, and hopefully he can force the Cubs to make a tough decision as Jameson Taillon returns to the rotation as well. Then. Have to make a decision on what to do with a guy like Wisniewski, because I think he is the odd man out in that situation.
I say that, by the way, Jeremy, having the game that I most enjoyed going to last year, the whole season, was actually opening day, and Kyle Hendricks pitched fantastically against the Brewers and looked really sharp and had a lot of great movement. So I'm not saying it's out of the question. I'm not saying that he's guaranteed to fail. It's just I've also seen some other warm weather days where things were not going as well, and that's the concern. But to your point, if everybody else is healthy, I guess it would be that Wisniewski spot, and then you have to really kind of look at the future versus the past and the balancing act between the two.
One more injury of note happening as we're recording this podcast. Yan Gomes left the game after being hit in the head on a backswing from Yarmir Candelario in the first inning. So Gomes was taken out of the game. So hopefully nothing too serious there. we'll keep an eye on that. Let's look at the standings as we come out of the month of April. The first month is in the books, and the Chicago Cubs have a 14-13 record, so they are one game over 500 at the time of this recording, and I think that's where we thought this team was going to be. It felt a little more disappointing by the way the month ended and the way that the month started, as they started out pretty hot. But I think they ended up where you would expect. Tom,
better than where I expected? Sorry.
Yeah, and that's possible too.
I thought they'd be slightly under 500, so good for them.
So Tom, we're trying to figure it out here over the past couple of podcasts. Are the Cubs contenders, especially in a division like this?
Yeah, I think so. Because even if you look at their win-loss expectations right now, they're, I think, 4 games below where they should be by the numbers. And of course, I always kind of split those a little bit, So I think realistically, I would have given them another 2 wins, with some of the tough breaks that they've had, or all those left on base situations in Miami. Just those are the ones that come back to haunt you. Yeah. And, you are what your record is. So let's just say they are what they are. But yeah, very easily I could see them having 2 more wins. But, I think a lot of the angst that's already starting, on Cubs Twitter about, we need to bring Mervis up or Morel up just because all these games matter. It's a nice problem to have, but at the same time, I still feel like the Cubs are always, or at least right now, they're still in the big picture mode. At least I think that's the way Jed's operating when it comes to this thing. But yeah, they're in a situation right now in this division where Pittsburgh's playing out of their minds and Milwaukee's really good. I don't expect the Cardinals to completely, continue where the trend that they're currently on. So yeah, it would be nice to start making sure that they win every game that they can. I think that they're going to be interesting all year long. I really do. I think that the 2 biggest reasons for that, at the beginning of the year, I thought they'd be a 500 team. So they're pretty much right where I thought they were. But I didn't think that the offense was going to be this good. I knew that the pitching might be able to carry them, especially if Steele was what I thought he could be. But I don't think anybody expected Cody Bellinger to be this good, or Yan Gomes to have the kind of, output he's putting on offense, Patrick Wisdom. So yeah, they're getting, and some of that's going to regress a little bit, but hopefully they'll make some of that up with either a call up like Mervis, or you'll see, like Swanson looks like he's starting to put some pop back into his game. So I think the offense is going to be better than I thought it was. So I think they certainly can contend.
I think the one thing that would really crush this team would be if they had multiple injuries to the starting rotation, which I guess you could say about almost any team. But especially, to our good stars, like if a Steele and a Stroman went down simultaneously, we'd be in pretty hot water. But otherwise, I think, much like Tom, that I could see the offense regressing a bit, because when you look at some of the player performances so far, it'd be not impossible, but if they stayed at the rate they're at now, it would be record-setting. So I doubt that'll necessarily be the case. But they do have people, they do have reinforcements. And you talked, Jeremy, about Morel and Mervis. The guy who people aren't talking about at all, I don't see any reference to, because it's almost like he doesn't exist anymore, but who's actually playing pretty well at AAA right now is an old friend of ours, David Bodie. Remember him? Who also has, positional flexibility as well. So he doesn't just play one. He's not just a first baseman, for example. He can play, different places. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw him here at some point before things are over with. So yeah, on offense, I actually think the Cubs could withstand injuries. It's the pitching that would be the part that could, and maybe a closer will emerge, or maybe the Cubs will go out and get somebody who they feel can close games, especially if they're still in it. But they gotta keep winning, because it's hard to keep up with the daunting Pittsburgh Pirates.
We recapped the Pittsburgh Pirates schedule last week and how they got to where they got to. You don't get to play Colorado and Cincinnati all the time, so they will have to play real teams at some point, and then we'll see what they haven't played the Dodgers yet. They haven't played the Padres yet. We'll look and wait to see what that Pittsburgh Pirates that run differential of plus 48 might come back to earth. The Cubs with a plus 43 run differential definitely tells me that offense is exceeding expectations. We talked about it last week that we know that Patrick Wisdom will get streaky and he will get hot like he is right now. He will also cool down, and you hope that
Burrell is batting on the days that he's cold.
Yes, right. Somebody can fill in for that, especially when you're not getting the production out of first base that you want, which is what is when you're seeing the Cubs Twitter's talking about the numbers that Mervis is putting up. Because of the numbers that Hosmer is not putting up, his hard hit rate, the lowest of his career, at 18.9%. He's walked only 5 times to 19 strikeouts, and only 5 of his 18 hits are extra base hits so far this year. So,
am I the only person that thinks that's exactly what I expected him to do? Though?
That's exactly. This is not a surprise. No,
yeah, not at all. Like, if you told me that was his line at the beginning of the year, I just shrugged my shoulders and said, "Yeah, sounds about right." I'm sorry. What do people expect? What were people hoping for? Is anybody? I guess nobody's had him on their fantasy baseball roster the last couple of years. But let me tell you something. As somebody who forgets to draft first baseman a lot, I have, and he's not very good. So, there you go.
Yeah, do you think that the Cubs, will it take an injury for a Mervis or a Morel call up, or will they feel the pressure and have to bring one of these guys up to see what they can do?
I think when it comes to Mervis, it won't have to be an injury, because I do, agree with you guys that he's pretty much washed. It's not a secret, and I feel like the only reason why Mervis isn't up right now is just like, I think, was it Sahada Sharma that wrote that article in The Athletic today or yesterday, where he was saying that Hosmer's, the respect in the clubhouse might be a little challenged if they just were to cut Hosmer loose at this point. But I think the way they characterize it is that they want him, let him see him come out of this slump. But I don't think this is a slump. I think this is just, the end of the guy's usefulness. Now, not to say that he can't be on the roster, but yeah, for him to get a lot of meaningful at-bats at this point, is kind of silly. And if you bring Mervis up right now, it just, it might lengthen the lineup and give other guys a chance to regress, like we were talking about. And, lo and behold, Mancini's starting to hit. So a lot of those things might balance out a little bit. But when it comes to Morel, though, I do think it might take an injury, because right now, I think the way that he is rolling, you'd hate to take at-bats away from him, right? Because if he's up here right now, I can't see him starting more than 3 games a week with all the guys that they have right now to give at-bats to. Let alone Nelson Velasquez has actually put together some really nice at-bats and season backup.
Yeah, it's a good point. Let's look ahead to the month of May as we turn the calendar. We mentioned the Cubs are playing the Nationals as we record this, and they have 4 in Washington before returning home for a Friday, Saturday, Sunday against those same Miami Marlins. And
hey, Jeremy, before you get into next week specifically, can I tell you that after this Washington series, I was doing a little research, starting May 5th. From May 5th until June 8th, the Cubs only play 6 games against teams under 500 currently.
Ooh.
So if the Cubs are 500 on June 8th, I'll consider that to be kind of a success.
And
because it does get harder. Oh, and of those 6 games against teams under 500, 3 are against the Cardinals.
The Cardinals, so, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So,
Yeah, this is a tough stretch. So that's why we were looking at this playing 6 games against
series?
Miami. Yeah, that's why losing 3 against Miami is tough, because you've got a tough stretch here for the month of May. these four in Washington are real important to bank some wins before, and then before playing the Cardinals, the Twins, the Astros, the Phillies, the Mets, the Reds, and closing out the month of May against the Tampa Bay Rays. So yeah, that is a tough month of May schedule to look at. As we look ahead to the pitching matchups for this week, gotta like what you see here against the Nationals. Here we're sending these out, some good matchups here. And we were talking before the podcast started, Pat, that this Washington Nationals team is terrible.
Yep, they're really bad. And so bad, I think don't they start Trevor Williams tomorrow? Did I read that, or is that a joke?
No, that is.
Is that for real?
That is for real, yeah.
Okay.
It'll be Trevor Williams against Hayden Wisniewski tomorrow.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, yeah. So, that feels like a winnable game to me. And then they also they get Patrick Corbin on Thursday, and he of the 5.76 ERA or something. He's struggled mightily the last several years. And then on Wednesday, the day before that, in between Williams and Corbin, they don't face anybody. So that's great.
They have a TBD for the Wednesday game.
Yeah, that's about as positive a pitching matchup as you're going to get.
Yeah, they've got to redeem themselves from that Miami series. This is a good way to recover from that.
They call that getting healthy, don't they?
Yes.
This is how you get healthy.
Yeah.
We do like to do predictions here. So with looking ahead, the Cubs have no days off. So it is 7 straight games until the next time we podcast. So Tom, we'll start with you. Of the upcoming 7 games, what do you think will be the Cubs' record coming out of this?
Ooh, I'd love to see them go 5-2. So that's what I'm gonna go with. I think they can take 3 out of 4 against this team, and then hopefully win the series against Miami 2 out of 3. But yeah, it will be tough. Play that many games in a row. But yeah, if they were to drop more than 1 game to this team, that would be a shame. They rival the 2012 Cubs. This is really bad.
I agree. I think this is a 5-2 week, Pat. Are you as optimistic?
It is 100% likely that the Cubs will win 5 games or more. I'll say 5.
All right, it's unanimous. All right.
Yeah.
5-2 week. I like it.
Cubs are going to roll this week. Now they're going to beat the crap out of Miami a couple times. And one of those games will be by double digits, I think.
That Miami team's got some pitching though. That's not a bad team. They've got some athletes. Yeah, that's.
If we
like you said, I didn't like that matchup down there. To be honest with you, I mean, I thought they could have easily won any of those 3 games. But yeah, that team's pesky.
All right, and one other note here that I wanted to mention. I wanted to give you a chance to mention, Pat. We didn't talk about it yet on the podcast, but the passing of Beth Murphy.
Yeah.
I know. I think we should definitely say something. I know you know the Murphy family pretty well there.
Yeah. No. I mean, I've known Beth for a little over 20 years now, and really the last 15 years or so, I got to know her better because we served on the neighborhood board together. And she and her family have always been so generous to our community here at East Lakeview. And they've always sponsored our Oktoberfest, every September to raise money for charities and for schools in the area. And that's just one of many different charities they've supported over time. They've been just a great community partner for everybody around here. And it's a real loss. I mean, she's somebody who actually, when you talk about somebody who's a community leader, it's kind of it's a generic term seemingly, but if there was ever a community leader that was Beth Murphy, and that that is the definition of who she is, and her sons, her stepsons Brian and James, and their families, and Freddie and everybody else at Murphy's, is feeling a real loss right now, and I hope. I was fortunate to go. They had a couple events this last weekend, including an event on Saturday at Murphy's itself to celebrate her life, and it was very touching. It was great. They showed a lot of videos of her, and one of my favorite stories of all time was when we were planning a charity function once, and we needed some more items for our silent auction, and I was standing next to Beth. I'm like, what are we going to do? And she's like, oh, here. And she picks up her phone and she calls Eddie Vedder. And he answers. And I'm listening to both sides of the conversation through the phone. And she's like, Beth, how's it going? She's like, Eddie, I need some help. We need something. We need some stuff for our fundraiser. He's like, well, let me look around. So he goes around his house. And he finds, I got a book I could sign. And he's like, I got a tambourine here. Should I sign that? It's like, and just basically gets a bunch of stuff. And she's like, I really appreciated it. He's like, anything for you, Beth. You're the best. And he ended up, he said, well, she's like, well, if you could have your people send it, we'd really appreciate it. He's like, oh, no, I'll do it today myself. I'll just go down to the post office and send it to you. And that was a level of respect that Beth Murphy carried among people, celebrities and regular people. She could get Eddie Vedder to literally run around his house, get a bunch of items, autograph them, and then get in his car and drive to the post office and mail them to her. That's a community leader, if I've ever seen one. And she had that, she had that effect on numerous people, famous and not famous. And she just, really was kind of the glue for our neighborhood. So it is a tremendous loss. And we're sad for her passing. But it was a great event on Saturday. It was a great time to catch up and see people I haven't seen in a while and celebrate all the great things that she's done over the many years that she's been here.
And we saw the Cubs also acknowledged her and at the games as well. So
that's right. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I did not know Beth, but yeah, she's obviously royalty when it comes to Wrigleyville, and just they're not just another bar in Wrigleyville. They are like so famously linked to everything that's Cubs. So that's that's quite a loss. Sorry about that, guys.
And we are running up against time. I did have one more question for you, Cubs related here, Tom, before we let you go and wrap it up here. As we are 1 month in, looking ahead, who on this Cubs team could be potentially the Cubs all-star representative this year?
I actually think they've got a couple of them. I mean, if you look at Cody Bellinger's, he's playing like he's resembling his former MVP self. So I think he's definitely one of those guys. Nico Horner might be the best leadoff man in the league. I can see Dansby Swanson getting some votes, especially if he starts putting some more balls in the seats. Yeah, so I think you've got three legit guys right there. As far as and then you can't overlook Justin Steele and Marcus Stroman.
It's crazy to think about when we were watching the Cubs scratch for one guy they could call. Hey, we're sending Ian Happ, and and now there's a list that means this team has got good players, and it's definitely been entertaining to see them be in these games for the first month of the season.
By the way, Ian Happ's off to a strong start himself. While you mentioned it, I
didn't mean to slight him, but yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, even Drew Smiley's off to a fantastic start. I mean, when you think about it, this is a Cubs team that will send however many representatives the league needs based on probably, position and pitcher scarcity in the National League. But they have so many to choose from. I could see several going, like Utah, and really the only limits are going to be roster size and having to have, because they still have that stupid rule where you have to take like one person from the Cardinals and one from the Reds. All the bad
you do,
teams, right?
Yeah.
So there you go.
Excellent. Pat, any questions for Tom before we wrap it up?
Well, I would just say this, Tom. You've been a Cubs fan for many years now. Um, where is your psyche in terms of the Cubs these days? It's been a rough couple of years, obviously, with the lack of success and lack of spending on the team. But do you feel like the Cubs are turning a corner, and where do you see things going from here?
Yeah, I do. It was frustrating to obviously go through another rebuild, and the way they did it this year wasn't, or the way they did it this time wasn't as obvious. They kind of like pulled the Band-Aid off a little bit more slowly. But the way that Jed has put this team together, I think, obviously he's trying to, build around pitching and defense, which I actually prefer. I think it's always been my preference when it comes to a style of, play. And what kind of sucks is that I also feel that they don't really, before Cody Bellinger started playing like this, the only thing that I would say that this team lacks is like, a star. But the way Bellinger playing, I'm sorry, I can't even talk right now, but the way Bellinger is playing right now, he is playing like that star. So it's making the whole lineup just look a lot deeper. And it sucks that he's only on a 1-year deal. That's the only thing that gives me anxiety about that. But, we won't look too far ahead with that. But I do like the way Jets put this team together. I was talking to somebody, a friend of mine that used to be a scout, and he was just saying that, obviously Theo had more of an affinity for stars and trying to build things the way the Yankees and Red Sox did. Jed seems to be more of that, Tampa and let's say, Astros way of, looking at more of a landscape of the way he wants to build this thing. And I think that's kind of prudent. And you look at even the way this roster is playing right now, but the way that they're starting to develop pitching and some talent at the other levels, even if they don't have the same star power they did back in like 2015 in the system, or, even the year before that, they've got a lot of depth and a lot of different names that could be up here soon. So it's very encouraging.
Do you think, or I should say, this is sort of a theory I have, and I'm curious to see if you agree or disagree with. I think that this, whatever you want to call it, rebuild or retool or redesign, whatever it is, will basically live or die based on what happens over the next 2 or so years with the prospects of the minors, who comes up and can succeed, and who can sort of overperform or perform the way we hope, whether it's PCA or whether it's, what are the many pitchers in the system that they're highly touting, or any of the other position players. They've got so many, the Mervises of the world and Morels and others. They've got a lot of guys there, like you said, but we need several of them to click. And if we can, I think that gets the Cubs over the hump.
Yeah, I think the fastest way that's going to happen is if they get, some of these top end of the rotation guys, because I don't think Stroman's going to, pitch at this level for much longer. So if Steele is in that conversation, or a guy like a Kate Horton, and then you see Wesneski take that next step, then you've got the foundation. If you've got that starting rotation, you've got those guys that are homegrown, and you don't have to go spend a ton of money on pitching. That's huge, but I also still feel like the thing that they could do this offseason would be able to go get another top of the rotation arm. And then, you've got something. So I think that, many people obviously are counting on PCA, and I think at the very least, he's going to be a dynamite center fielder and possible leadoff man. But yeah, there's not like a true star in the system that we can kind of point to other than him. So there's not, that Chris Bryant or Javi Baez or some Russell type necessarily. So that's why it's very important that they get, more than a couple of these guys that come up and show that they can contribute. And yeah, it would be nice, like I said, to keep a guy like Cody Bellinger around. But if they can't, they've got to come up with some other guys in the system. And Kevin Alcantara, it could be that guy, So yeah, I've got some hope.
So are you saying that you don't think Hosmer is going to be that star? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, and not even mention Matt Mervis, but even if he's just a guy that can hit fifth or sixth in your lineup and produce, from the power standpoint, that's going to be huge.
So there's a lot to be optimistic about, and it's always it's always fun when we can have a positive, fun conversation about the Cubs, because we've been doing this podcast for quite a long time, and the last couple of years have been rough. Mm-hmm. So having an entertaining product to help us get through the each week is definitely a benefit. And this first month of the season in the books, it definitely has been. A Cubs team that's in every game. That's all you can ask for, and be competitive. So definitely has been fun. Will continue to be fun, hopefully, as the season rolls on. And Tom, please remind all of our listeners where they can find your show and how they can find your work and follow you on Twitter.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Tom Loxas, Loxas, and then the Beers and Beat Guys podcast, pretty much anywhere you find your podcasts. Usually have either a local beat writer or a blogger or a podcaster on every week, and just try to pick their brain. And we also enjoy a beverage while we do the pod, so that's kind of fun. And I look forward to having you guys on soon.
Excellent. Definitely looking forward to it. And you can follow us on Twitter at Wrigleyville Nat. Same for Instagram as well. We sent the call out last week. We needed 5-star reviews. We needed some new comments out there on the Apple Podcast reviews. We wanted to roll some other comments off, and you guys came through for us, so thank you. We could always use more, so if you haven't gotten to it, you were planning on it, please do. But definitely those of you who went out and gave us those 5-star reviews, always appreciate that. And you can support the show by doing that. That's a free way to do it. You can also support the show by going to our Patreon, patreon.com/Wrigleyville Nation as well. That is how we've kept this show ad-free for over 5 years now. So thank you to all our patrons. We couldn't do it without you. Every single penny goes right back into this show. And some of those pennies are going to go to getting the video up and running, the video version of this podcast. So you can go get ready by subscribing to our YouTube channel. Search for Wrigleyville Nation Podcast on YouTube, and you can subscribe there. We will be having a video version pretty soon over there, so that's another way to support the show as well. All the links I just described, the entire back catalog, everything is available, of course, at the website, WrigleyvilleNation.com. And with that, we're calling it a podcast. Pat, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thanks again, everyone, for listening, and we'll talk to you again next time.